The first American friend of met in Beijing this year. That's what Chinese leader Xi Jinping said to Bill Gates. The business magnate visited China and met with Xi on Friday. Just one day ahead of that meeting, the Gates Foundation pledged to pour millions into a Chinese medical research institute it helped establish years ago. What do you think about the chain of events? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already.
This program is brought to you by Preserve Gold, the #1 precious metals IRA provider. Call 855-962-3322.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Microsoft's co-founder Bill Gates met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Friday. This comes just one day after the Gates Foundation pledged a $50 million donation to a Chinese medical research institute. The meeting took place at Beijing's Diaoyutai State Guest House, a diplomatic complex used to house foreign dignitaries. She called Gates an old friend, saying that he was happy to see the business magnate after 3 years. Gates, on the same token, said he was honored to meet with Xi, adding that there's a lot of important topics to discuss. The Chinese Medical Research Institute that's receiving the grant is called GHDDI. It was first established in 2016 with the help of the Gates Foundation, China's elite Tsinghua University, and the city of Beijing. The $50 million from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is slated to bolster its drug research capacity over the next 5 years. Gates' connection with Beijing goes beyond GHDDI. Microsoft has been in China for more than 30 years and has a large research center there. Its web portal, Bing, is the only China-accessible foreign search engine. As the regime tightens its grip on the nation's digital sector, Bing's search results on a number of sensitive topics have been censored. Cybersecurity research group Citizen Lab found that Bing also restricts certain Chinese search results for U.S. users. Worth noting, it's rare for a Chinese leader to meet with a foreign business leader. Just recently, Apple CEO Tim Cook and Tesla CEO Elon Musk both visited China. But Gates is the only one who got to meet with Xi Jinping. Top U.S. memory chip maker Micron is committing to a major China investment. The company announced Friday it would funnel over $600 million into its facility in the Chinese city of Xi'an over the next few years. Posting the news on social media platform WeChat, the company quoted its CEO saying the project demonstrates Micron's unwavering commitment to its China business and team. Some of those funds will be packaging equipment from a Xi'an-based subsidiary of Taiwan's Power Tech Technology. Micron has been using its gear in the factory since 2016 and said the investment would create 500 jobs. That's on top of offering contracts to 1,200 employees of Power Tech's subsidiary. In total, the deal will grow Micron's China-based workforce to a total of over 4,500 staff. The company also plans to open a new production line at the plant. The announcement comes after China's cyberspace regulator zeroed in on Micron last month, blocking the country's key infrastructure providers from buying from the company. That's after it said Micron failed a security review. Micron is the United States' biggest memory chip maker. A controversial Chinese company is moving forward with a planned factory in Michigan. That's after clearing a hurdle that could stop construction in its tracks. Here's more.
The Chinese company is called Gotion. It's slated to build an over $2 billion battery plant in Michigan. The facility would make lithium-ion batteries used in electric cars. But it has been facing strong local pushback over its China ties. Gotion's bylaws require the company to operate a Chinese Communist Party cell within its management structure. Beyond that, it must carry out party activities, quote, in accordance with the Constitution of the Communist Party of China. The state of Michigan has approved over $170 million in taxpayer money for the plant. Supporters say it would create over 2,300 jobs. The locals are casting doubt.
They feel like these are empty promises for jobs, just to try to get the community on board and supporting Gotion coming in.
Julie Reynolds has lived in West Michigan for over 20 years. She told NTD that locals staged rallies and protests, adding they're concerned about pollution and potential communist influence.
I don't think that we need to bring that in, invite that in, give them tax incentives to come over here when we're essentially fighting a battle with China on many different levels. So I don't understand why we are bolstering up our enemies, so to speak, instead of choosing a company that would better America, that would help our citizens and hold true to our values.
Amid the heightened tensions, Gotion took a pause and requested a review from CFIUS. The U.S. government agency scrutinizes foreign investment deals that could pose national security threats. Gotion said CFIUS decided the company's project is not in its jurisdiction, meaning it has no authority to block it. On that news, Gotion said it would move forward with the project. Reacting to the news, Congressman John Molnar called it a big disappointment. He represents the 2nd District of Michigan. Molnar added that it shows the flaws of the CFIUS process. It was basically them punting and saying it's not our job. NTD reached out to the Treasury Department and Gotion for comment, but did not hear back before airtime.
Is China's Huawei one step closer to being chased out of the West? The Chinese telecoms giant is already banned in the U.S. Now, citing similar security concerns, a top European Union official is calling on more EU countries to ban or restrict China's Huawei and ZTE from their 5G networks. Warning about the, quote, high-risk Chinese 5G vendors, the European Commission on Thursday announced it will no longer use services that rely on the companies. So far, only 10 EU countries have followed suit. That's including France, Sweden, Romania, Belgium, Denmark, and the Baltic countries. The Commission urged all EU states to ban Huawei without delay, calling it no different than the bloc's previous victory over its reliance on Russian gas and oil. China responded later, saying it firmly opposes the ban on Huawei and that the EU Commission has no legal basis to block the firm. But a report by the Financial Times reveals another aspect. Despite the existing bans, Huawei is an active participant in an EU grant, totaling over $4 million. The fund is designed to help Huawei develop critical tech breakthroughs like AI, 6G, cloud computing, quantum sensing, and autonomous driving. In the U.S., Washington has zeroed in on Chinese telecom companies in America's 5G networks. Concerns about the Chinese company's threat are partially due to a Chinese law passed in 2017. It allows Beijing to compel Chinese companies and their overseas subsidiaries to hand over user data if asked to do so. Woes from another China-based global lender. The new development bank, built by China to challenge the dollar, now needs dollars. Also known as the Brics Bank, it was set up 8 years ago by the world's biggest developing economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. With those nations representing 25% of global GDP, the bank was doing pretty well. But now an examination of its finances says it stopped making new loans after struggling to raise dollar funds to repay its debts. Tasked with reshaping international finance for Beijing, how did the Brics Bank get here? Its members found they couldn't rely solely on China's banks and capital markets. So the Brics borrowed billions of dollars in funding from Wall Street, a total of 2/3 of its borrowings. Then, after Russian troops marched into Ukraine in February 2022, Wall Street quickly became wary of lending to a bank almost 40% owned by Russia and China. Since then, the Brics Bank has taken on debt at a rate nearly 5 times as expensive as previous loans to service old borrowings and stay current with its own fund. As a result, the bank essentially doubled the borrowing premium for its members. To bolster its resources, the bank is reportedly in talks with Saudi Arabia, Argentina, and Honduras about becoming members. But little progress has been made so far. And in light of China's own economic slowdown, Beijing has been reluctant to give its own money to boost the Brics Bank. Outsmarting Beijing in artificial intelligence, that could be Washington's new goal on the technology front. Congress is now weighing a bipartisan bill to measure the nation's AI competitiveness.
The bill, known as the Global Technology Leadership Act, would set up the Office of Global Competition Analysis. It will help determine whether the U.S. stays in the front of the pack in developing artificial intelligence. That's with an eye on adversaries like China. Senators Michael Bennet, Todd Young, and Mark Warner introduced the bill last Thursday. According to a statement from Bennet, the new office will assess technology competitiveness based on a fusion of intelligence and commercial data. These are often separated in intelligence and civilian agencies, respectively. Bennett said the separation blinds the U.S. in key technologies like 5G and semiconductors. The Colorado lawmaker noted, "We cannot afford to lose our competitive edge in strategic technologies like semiconductors, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence to competitors like China." Senator Todd Young said the bill would keep the national security community in sync to win the technological race against the Chinese Communist Party. The new bill comes as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced 3 briefings on AI. The congressman vowed to make tackling AI and outpacing Beijing his 2 top priorities this year. Meanwhile, the White House is mulling over a new regulatory regime to curb U.S. investment in Chinese companies. According to an earlier report, from 2015 to 2021, U.S. investors made up 1/5 of those funding Chinese AI firms. The deals totaled over $40 billion, almost 40% of the sums raised in China.
Several thousand South Korean and U.S. troops took part in a show of force on Thursday, considered among the biggest ever, complete with fighter jets, tanks, and drones. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is overseeing the drills.
우리의 힘으로
Protecting national security by ourselves is the real peace. Only a powerful army that foes would not dare overcome, and an army that can win against enemies can guarantee the freedom, peace, and prosperity of South Korea.
Conducted near the border with North Korea, the drills are designed to respond to the North's nuclear and missile threats. The war game also marks the 70th anniversary of the military alliance between Seoul and Washington. But Seoul's closeness to the U.S. has prompted warnings from Beijing that the country has made, quote, wrong bets in the Sino-U.S. rivalry. Seoul has been pivoting to a hardline stance on China since Yoon took office. Last week, Seoul's foreign ministry summoned China's envoy after he accused South Korea of tilting towards the U.S. and away from China. Next, a Chinese teenager broke through the defense line amid a soccer game to hug his soccer idol, Lionel Messi. The kid caught in the video broke onto the pitch from the corner. After his hug with the world's top soccer player, he tried to flee from the guards, and surprisingly fast, until later more security crews arrived. Audience members were heard laughing and cheering for the young man. It all happened during a friendly match between Australia and Argentina this Thursday. China invited the 2 teams to China's capital city, Beijing. Besides the hug, the young man, surnamed D, also high-fived goalkeeper Emi Martinez. The match went back to normal after the short drama. Even though Messi told the coordinator to take it easy on the fan, the local police still put him in administrative custody. He's also facing a ban from attending similar matches within the next 12 months. News from Washington. The U.S. has decided to rejoin Unesco after 6 years as it looks to counter China's influence on the world stage. The return means the Biden administration has to pay $600 million in arrears in full. Is it money well spent? An expert breaks it down.
The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, is an educational and cultural organization. After UNESCO's recognition of Palestine as a sovereign state in 2011, President Obama cut all the funds to the body. In its decision to accept Palestine, the organization cited Bethlehem. The city is known as the birthplace of Jesus and is a major destination for religious pilgrimages. The U.S. withdrew in 2019 under President Trump. UNESCO was first to announce the U.S. plan to rejoin. The Chinese ambassador to the organization was quick to criticize the U.S. for its earlier exit and urged Washington to pay its membership dues in full.
The U.S. withdrew twice from UNESCO, which had a negative impact on the organization's work. Being a member of an international organization is a serious issue.
Before it can rejoin, the Biden administration will have to pay off $600 million in arrears, plus a $10 million bonus to support the organization. One expert is raising concerns that instead of reclaiming U.S. leadership, Biden's funds will give Beijing an upper hand instead.
What's happening now is that China and Russia can block UN Security Council decisions that are necessary to defend democracy and freedom around the world. China is trying to take over the entire organization and run it for its own purposes, which would ultimately be global hegemony.
He stressed that the UN has changed and that countries like China or Russia should be excluded for violating democracy and human rights.
It may make sense to first remove China and Russia from the United Nations, for example, by refusing them visas into New York City, Paris, Rome, Switzerland. Just cancel their visas. If those four countries that the cities are connected to obviously cancel their visas, maybe we could essentially kick them out of the UN.
He noted that action would cause a major uproar.
But China and Russia, by threatening and actually engaging in war against their neighbors, it's not only Ukraine and Taiwan, but it's also India, Vietnam, suffered a war in 1979. These countries are violating the UN Charter. They're violating the Human Rights Declaration of 1948. So it's, they really don't belong in the UN anymore.
Kaur added that allowing them to stay and have an influence over how U.S. tax dollars are used globally is a problem.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. China's Huawei back in the spotlight after a top European Union official urged fellow EU states to ban the high-risk Chinese supplier without delay. 4 years ago, the telecom giant was poised to control 5G networks globally, but now its goal has been reduced to mere survival. What does Huawei's decline say about the geopolitics of the tech world? We hear from John Pelson, former Chief Convergence Officer for British Telecom and author of Wireless Wars, for details. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.